Tanshe Kioau, Valerie McLeod de Shinakashin, dans la vallée Capelle de Wigan, nous comme sa famille, la Rivière Rouge aux Chiwak. Good afternoon, hello, whatever time you're tuning in. I'm Valerie McLeod. I'm running for regional representative in Eastern Region 3 for the Métis Nation Saskatchewan election that's coming up on May 24th. What I want to do very quickly as I can, because I've tried to do this twice now, and the first time the video was 50 minutes long, 50. The second time it was 20 minutes long. I'm going to try and speed through this and stay focused and hopefully get this done in under 12 to give you my platform, a general overview, and then I'm going to do a 6-part video series that highlights each of the 6 points I'm outlining in more depth so that I can really speak to a lot of this information that I've gathered and that I'd like to share, and hopefully get your feedback on these specific points. I could talk about this all day and night and every day and night, and I do already, I think. So let's go. Let me try and do this quickly, and then if you choose to go on to those more in-depth videos, then you're coming for the full ride with me. So my platform, I've used a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek acronym. I'm calling it It's Time to Go Home CIRNAC, and I will be using the acronym CIRNAC to highlight my 6 points. But you may recognize CIRNAC as being the acronym the Government of Canada uses for Crown, Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, who were formerly INAC when it was Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada. This is the department, and they actually now also have Indigenous Services Canada, which is ISC. Those are the same. CIRNAC, ISC were just split in two from the greater INAC that used to be. So they're all the same peeps. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So CIRNAC, as far as I am going to reclaim this acronym for my platform, means that C is for Constitution. That's the MNS Constitution, which must be protected, respected, and enforced by us, the citizens. Can't leave it up to anybody else. If we don't do that, it's not worth more than the paper it's written on. We don't have a government, we don't have anything unless we, as citizens, ensure our Constitution is followed. Identity, that's I. The letter I, identity. This is going to be a bit about our registry and some of the issues that I think we've seen with that in the last 8 years. It's also going to be about Michif language and how that is an emergency and needs to be a top priority. And it's not a top priority right now as far as the current administration. Like my friend Bruce Lamont says, if we lose the language, we won't know who we are anymore. If you don't have the Michif language, you don't have the Michif worldview. And that's completely endangered right now. It's an emergency. I can't stress that enough. So I'll get to that in the I video, identity. We're moving on to R, rights and claims. This is going to be a long video too. In Eastern Region 3, this is a big one for sure. It's we're talking about the land title, Métis Aboriginal land title. In Canadian law, they talk about Aboriginal law, Aboriginal rights, Section 35 rights. We need to talk about the treaty, the Our Moment Treaty that's happening, the Northwest Land Claim, and what it means for this region and what it means for those unextinguished Métis land title rights still exist, and also the harvesting rights. And we need to talk about that as well. So I'm going to stop myself from getting into it right now like I want to and leave it at that, and then come with me to that rights and claims video, if you will. N is for nation building. And this is going to touch on, Michif systems of governance and organizing, and how we can utilize that for structuring our government, our institution, whatever you want to call it, whatever we're doing here. The alternative is what's been going on already in the last 8 years, was getting a list from the government of Canada with some check boxes on it saying, you do all these things, create it in this way, make these things, and we'll recognize you, we'll give you self-government. And that's not how it works. The government of Canada can't give us self-government. We give us self-government. We self-determine. And that is also our inherent right. We have an inherent right to self-determination and an inherent right to self-government. So we need to look at those systems that we're using and what's being forced on us by outside interests, and what is genuinely working for us and serving us. And, I need to stop myself again so we can keep going, but that's a big deal as far as what we're doing here, what we're really doing here. We don't need to form a colonial government just because Canada says it's got to look this way and you need to hit these boxes. One other quick issue I'll talk about in that nation building video is returning Métis. And some of the, I myself am a returning Métis. My grandmother was told by her mother, you tell everyone we're French. It was Ancestry Day at school or something like that. And she said, well, what are we? And her mom said, you just tell them we're French. So she did her whole life till she was in her 60s. And, her mother had passed away by then. And she decided she wanted to speak the truth. And I'm very glad she did. But, I was probably 12 or 13 when I found that out. And so I do have a perspective as a returning Métis, but I also can acknowledge the perspectives of people who have always known they were Métis, always been proud to be Métis, always had their culture in their lives, always had community in their lives. And I have heard and I respect the perspectives of people who have mentioned some of what they see as problematic with some of the way things start to happen with returning Métis. And I understand this, and I do see what they're saying. It's observable. So without getting too much into that too, I have some ideas about how we can turn things around in that respect, do a little bit more nation building and community building there with returning Métis, and leave ourselves less exposed and vulnerable to outside interests who also know that there's returning Métis, and that, there's ways I think that outside interests are maybe using that to their advantage and are manipulating and influencing things within our nation, knowing that there is a sizable number of returning Métis who might not know not just the culture, but who might not know the history of the political movement, who might not know the history of the MNS. It's a long history. I can't wait to talk about, I'm fascinated by the journey that the MNS as an institution has taken, and even more reason that we need to protect it vigorously right now. I don't know if it's ever been more in danger than it is right now, to be honest, of being overtaken and carried off, and not just the MNS, but they very well could take our very identity with them when they take this. And I am referencing the feds. I am referencing these influences of the Canadian government. And no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have the receipts. I have all the documents to back up everything that I will get into. But I can't stress enough that we need to really take action right now on all of these matters, because another couple years of, ambivalence, or just kind of, trusting that these people are here because they have our best interests in mind, or that Canada wants to do a treaty with us because they have our best interests in mind, or they finally, recognized something, figured it out. No, they didn't. They have an agenda, and they have something they want from us that they need very badly, and it's worth a lot of money, like a lot. So we'll get into that, but returning Métis is something I will also touch on. A is for accountability. We're talking the AGAs that got to happen. Hasn't happened in 8 years. It's part of our constitution. It's a travesty that has stopped, and a lot of issues are happening because they've cut out the citizens from our governance process. That annual General Assembly is for our citizens to come to meet with each other, to be in community, and also to get questions answered, to be kept in the loop by the government, the executive, the PMC, the MLA, to ratify the decisions and the financial statements. And, this is a member-led, citizen-led body, organization, government, nation. You can't just cut the people out and think, hello, red flag. Why do we think that happened? After 2016, a third-party management contract happens through the government of Canada, and all of a sudden our AGA stopped. And there's a fella from Gatineau, Quebec, sitting in the position of CEO since then. It's gotten crazy, and I can't wait to tell you guys all about it. You'll probably know some. I bet you won't. I bet you that I can blow your mind a little bit with a few other things, though. Okay, C, the last C in my CIRNAC acronym is community governance, and I'm talking the locals, baby. And I think that, we're gonna have to really fight for this one, but it's a fight well worth it, because what they've done is I'm being told it's 350 employees or so now that they've got at M&S. We don't know who they are for the most part. My assumption is the majority of them are not Métis, because that's usually what happens when federal influences come in to start, helping you run your government. The same thing happened at the government of Nunavut. They told the Inuit that this would be self-government. This would be Inuit self-government in an Inuit land base. They've never had more than 50% Inuit represented in the government of Nunavut. Never. It's always been 50%, usually much lower. And when they do hire Inuit into that government, it's usually at lower pay scales, as in entry-level positions. And then you have your very, very top of the scale, which are the elected officials, right? First thing they did at M&S after the new CEO came in was all the elected officials got raises, right? All of a sudden the president of the M&S was making more than the premier of Saskatchewan. It was like, boom, there's a reason for this. This is a template. They've done this before, okay? We're getting the Nunavut treatment right now. Okay, and I'll get into that as well, and why, there are lessons to be learned here. We're late on all of this, and that's a good thing. We have the hindsight to look back and look at, well, what happened with First Nations after the treaties? What did the government of Canada do? What vulnerabilities are we exposed to that we could look back and see how we could protect ourselves maybe a little better and learn some lessons from what happened. And same thing with, the Nunavut government, I think that was 25 years ago. Again, there's lessons to be learned there. And we'll get into that. So that's my platform. That's my It's Time to Go Home CIRNAC platform. And again, I'm Valerie McLeod, running for regional representative in Eastern Region 3. Please reach out to me. I would love to talk about this stuff with you. Obviously, I love to talk about this in general. We're at 15 minutes, not too bad. But my phone number is on the mnselections.ca website. If you know where to go to see your Eastern Region 3 candidates on there, then you can get it. I'm not going to just plaster it all over the internet right now, but you know, if you're in this to really figure out what's going on in this election, it's there. If you want to call me or text me, I would encourage you to do so. And I would love to talk to you about this. I will also offer to come out to where you live, your community, your local, talk to your family at the kitchen table if that's what you would prefer. And even if you already have decided who you're voting for, even if it's after the election, please, please, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff, and I think we all need to be sharing much more, exchanging information, strategizing, coming together, unifying, and we can absolutely do much, much more than CIRNAC can do coming to take over for us or, you know, show us how to do self-government. You know, they got their constitution in 1982. Okay, our people were writing constitutional documents and frameworks starting in 1869. So we don't need you guys. We don't need you, CIRNAC. We don't. You know, we can talk partnerships. We can talk negotiations. That's all good. You know, but we don't need handlers. We don't need handlers. Okay, and what was I going to say? My last thing. My email, michifnation@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook, Valerie Raye, Raye, McLeod. There should be links all over wherever you see this video. So, yeah, just come along if you'll indulge me for the other videos, and we can really get into some in-depth stuff. And hopefully I will be able to have a discussion with you at some point if you reach out and we can learn from each other. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Vote Valerie Raye McLeod for Eastern Region 3 on May 24th.